So you might be talking about some truly giant machines that made them.
I think you believe the official story of the JFK assassination, do you?
He knew a mystery when he saw it, and he couldn't explain it.
What's the speculation? Like, what's the wildest speculation as to how these things were made?
Well, I'm pretty convinced that there was there's obviously saws and tube drills that are powered by something. Now, I think it may not just be pure friction. There might be ultrasonics involved. One of the whole interesting things I like about this space is it's like, and this has to do with even like the energy stuff that Randall was talking about, that he's coming to talk about as well. There are realms of science that sit outside of our understanding. We'll know more tomorrow, in 10 years, in 1,000 years about science. So I think when we look at some of these things in the past, we should be open-minded enough to consider the possibility that some of the answers may sit outside of our current perspective, because our tendency is to look at it all and try and how would we do it?
Right.
How
but
would
does
our
anybody
technology solve
have
this?
wild speculation that you've entertained?
Yeah, I think there's So one of the topics that often gets mentioned here is like ultrasonic drilling. So having it resonate at a frequency that matches the native frequency of the rock and sort of separating the rock more easily. And that's a technology that we're developing. Like, we do some ultrasonic drilling like this today with jewelry and stuff, and you literally vibrate. You find the correct vibration. You can put like a little star-shaped bit through a stone. They do it in like small work. I've seen lots of examples. And if you turn off the machine, it's like Excalibur stuck in the stone. You can't get that thing out. Like, you need that vibration to go through it. Plasma, you can even go as far as, well, they were softening the stone somehow with some molecular technology. Speculation like that. I would also say that some of these examples of technology and machining extend way up to these massive objects. Like, you have 1,000-ton single-piece objects that also exhibit some of these signs of precision engineering. So you might be talking about some truly giant machines that made them. Giant columns and statues and things like that.
And what do conventional archaeologists say when they're confronted by all of this data, the pottery, or excuse me, the vases, this stuff that you're looking at here? What do they say?
Well, you either just get a denial and they won't address it, and you get dismissed as just being ridiculous pseudo archaeology fantasy theory type thing, or in the case of the tube drills, for example, they will, and it's a funny story, because they will argue that no, it's not spiral. The grooves on that thing aren't spiral. And in fact, in the textbook, this is what Chris Dunn found out. In the textbook where they do try to address the engineering with that tube drill, they took the photo of the tube drill and they just tilted it, just a little bit. So when you look at it on the page, the lines look horizontal. It's literally in the textbook.
Oh, they fucked with it in the textbook?
Yeah.
Why would they do that?
They altered the photo because if you admit that tube has a spiral groove on it, now you're admitting that they're cutting into that granite at a ridiculous rate, and you can't do any of that stuff with any of the primitive tools. It has this flow-on effect that just knocks over this house of cards that says all this stuff was built with primitive technology, and our whole concept of the ancient Egyptians is off. Now, I don't think it's... I think the dynastic Egyptians, they used primitive tools. I think they just inherited a lot of stuff that's potentially a lot older. And the proofs in the puddings with these vases, for example, that stuff, those things disappear from dynastic Egypt after the 3rd, 4th dynasty. They don't make them anymore. They make alabaster vases.
Is that a tool?
What is that?
That's a fantastic example of what I would call an out-of-place artifact. It's a hollow tube of lapis lazuli, which, by the way, there's no quarries for lapis in Egypt. The closest one's probably in Afghanistan. Came from Gebel Tariq, found in a pre-dynastic site. It's hollowed. It's perfectly made. This is a very difficult thing to achieve, even with modern machinery. And it's displayed in a cabinet next to what? Bone and beads. Right?
And what is that? What is that supposed to be? That tube?
It's something decorative, I assume. It has a gold sheath, but it's a hollow tube. I actually have pictures of it from the end on, not probably in the ones you have, Jamie, but yeah, hollow tube. It's an out-of-place artifact. Like these things from hard stone, and these are more examples. Rock crystal, obsidian gourds and vases that show just perfect, just very high degrees of sophistication.
You should mention the
pre-dynastic,
the statue faces and the symmetry. How can you possibly do that by hand? This will wow you.
Yeah. So there's there's a whole category of aspects to the discussion around ancient technology, right? And I have to be kind of careful about what you say, oh, it is or it isn't, because in reality, we really haven't analysed that many artifacts. This vase work that we've done, first one we've actually taken a look at, that core, that's the first one and the only one that's really been analysed. So I characterise something that's beyond the capabilities of these primitive ancient civilizations as being, okay, machining marks, tool marks, like these giant circular saws, tube drills, precision, and there's elements to precision, and one of those is symmetry. And there's been some interesting studies done on the faces of giant statues. One in particular is the face of Ramses. There's a statue at Luxor. They've since put their head back up. It's up now 30 feet in the air on top of the statue, but it used to be on the ground. And again, Chris Dunn was real seminal in this. He went and took a photo, like bang on, like very front on, and then what he did was you take a copy of that photo, you make it 50% transparent, make the original 50% transparent, you take one and you flip it like on that horizontal axis, then you overlay them, right? So you would see like the left to right, it's like overlaying the left side on the right side, and it's perfect. It's this face here, but I wonder if you can find the picture of Chris Dunn. That's actually
There's your video right there.
Video's there as well, where I get into it.
Website, but that's not that picture you're asking for.
No, it's similar, but it shows other aspects of, well, the same radius of tool being used to cut. But what's interesting about the symmetry, it's perfectly symmetrical, left to right. Now, this isn't a feature in humans. No human is perfectly symmetrical, different nostrils, different eyeballs. It's also not something that is done in artwork. So, people often say, well, Michelangelo, he carved David. It's a beautiful statue. I've seen it's incredible, but it's human. It's not symmetrical. Symmetrical is, you can't achieve that degree of symmetry just by eyeballing it and doing it by hand. And it's also something that's not really human. I think some of these statues almost look a bit inhuman because of that symmetry when they're up there and they're staring at you, because it's mind-blowing to actually go and look at them. But it's the other aspect is the most efficient way to create that would be to say, well, if you were going to design it in a computer, it's like, well, I'm going to create half this face in a program and map it out, and then I'm just going to reverse it and say, well, that's the other half. It's literally the most efficient way to do it, and that's kind of what we're seeing in some of these statues.
Go back to that image, please.
It's virtual perfection.
And what's the explanation for this that modern archaeologists use?
They did it by hand, right?
They do it by hand. That's literally what they say. You just don't... They're not engineers and construction experts at the end of the day. That's the problem. So it's very difficult to engage them on those specific details.
So let's find one that we disagree on. I think you believe the official story of the JFK assassination, do you?
More or less, yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
My belief, and this changes over time, I think that Lee Harvey Oswald was in on it. I think he was a part of it, but I think there were multiple people that were in on it. That's what I believe.
Do you think there are multiple shooters?
Yes. And one of the reasons why I believe that is because of the formation of the single bullet theory. And the single bullet theory was formed because the fact that they had to account for one bullet that hit the underpass, ricocheted off, and put some man in the hospital. And that before that, they did not have an explanation for why all of these bullet holes, all these wounds were in all these different people's bodies. The other reason why I'm inclined to believe there's a conspiracy was the fact that they found that bullet on Connolly's gurney when they brought him into the hospital. It's too convenient, and the bullet itself is fairly pristine. Now, knowing as much as I know about bullets from personal experience of hunting, you can't hit anything with a bullet. I pulled a lot of bullets out of animals. When you shoot an animal and you hit bone, those bullets, they distort brutally. I mean, they don't look like that after they go through two people and hit all sorts of bone. That's the bullet that came out of Connolly's body, or Connolly's gurney, excuse me. And that's the bullet that they're attributing to this single bullet theory. If you look at the path of the bullet that goes through Connolly, or goes through Kennedy and then goes through Connolly, that to me is not unbelievable. It's not unbelievable.
That one is. Yeah, you got to look at the other one.
But
Yeah.
even that one, see what I'm saying? Even that one is not unbelievable. It is believable to me because I know that bullets do strange things when they hit things.
Right, but you got to combine that with the fact that the bullet came out fairly pristine, which means it didn't actually go through a kind of a bouncy path like that.
Right.
It
Well,
went through a
that's-
straight path. This diagram is from
A conspiracy theorist
Yeah,
book.
essentially.
Yes. But the
there,
thing
there are other
is,
diagrams that will show the actual path with him. Like, they've got the butts there on the same level, and you know that Kennedy was actually sitting
he was
above
elevated.
Connolly.
Yes. So see if we can find one that has the actual seating arrangement or more accurate seating. Well, the one right there with the red line in the right-hand side, the one on the right-hand side, that's a more accurate.
From above, yeah.
Yeah, from above.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that there was particles. There was more metallic particles from the bullets, more fragments from the bullet in Connolly's body than were missing from the bullet. I do not believe that was the bullet, and I think that is a very reasonable assumption.
Well, you know what you should do? You should get one of those guns, get the same bullets, get some ballistic dummies with some bones inside, and start shooting.
They've already done that.
Yeah,
Penn and Teller did that.
Yeah, but some people have done it, and they have found pretty close to what actually happened.
No, they didn't.
Within the round.
No. Every bullet that hit bone got distorted. That's just what happens. When you shoot those bullets into water, or you shoot those bullets into like fluff or something like that doesn't have a lot of impact to slow the bullet down, then you get a bullet that looks like that. If you shoot a bullet into bone, they distort wildly.
But the bone was the last thing that it hit.
But it doesn't matter. It's still hitting bone.
But it stopped at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, didn't it hit bone in Kennedy's body as well?
Went through his neck, didn't it? So.
The odds of it hitting only soft tissue, and it's going to go through his neck, and it came out here, that it didn't clip one of his vertebrae or something like that, I don't think that's real.
Yeah.
I think also there's a difference between, and this is fact, from David Lifton's book, Best Evidence, which was a book by an accountant who went over the Warren Commission report and found all these factual inaccuracies and all these contradictions. He found that there was a difference in the autopsy report at Bethesda, Maryland, the Bethesda Naval Hospital, versus what they had reported on the scene in Dallas. The first doctors that got a hold of Kennedy's body in Dallas before they flew him to Bethesda said that the hole in his neck was an entry wound. When they got to Maryland, they changed that to a tracheotomy hole. They changed the impact, and they said that this was not an impact from a bullet, that it was from something else.
Yeah, someone said they enlarged the hole to insert a trach tube.
Yeah, well, I think, there was also a lot of pressure on these people to try to wrap this up nice and tight and say that Lee Harvey Oswald was the shooter.
There was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this big thing about the CIA inventing the FBI? The FBI, well, inventing the term conspiracy theory was a CIA thing.
I think it was the CIA.
Yeah, and this was a couple of years after the assassination. There was a memo that went out where they were concerned about all these conspiracy theories that were coming out. And they used the term conspiracy theories, and then they said they should try to basically debunk them and make the people who spread them around look like conspiracy theorists, basically.
Right.
So the theory is that the term conspiracy theory came from that particular memo. But that memo, they never actually encouraged people to use the term. But yeah, there was a huge concern from the CIA that they would lose the trust of the public if everybody started believing that it was a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
At least that's what they said. I mean, maybe there is a conspiracy, and maybe they're just trying to cover it up. But
did you see the most recent dump of information on the Kennedy assassination that Jack Ruby had stated to people that before the day of the Kennedy assassination, keep an eye out today, there's going to be fireworks?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, those Jack Ruby, who eventually wound up shooting Lee Harvey Oswald in front of the police officers.
Yeah, but something like that. There's no. He's dead, obviously, so you can't ask him what he actually meant. And things like that take on a special significance after an event.
True.
Whereas he could be just talking about like he was going to go visit his ex-wife or something, or he was going to go to the bar, or he was looking forward to shouting at the parade or whatever.
Right. Could have been nothing.
Yeah, people say things, and after something happens, people go back and they look at everything that happened, and then they say, well, that sounds like something significant.
meine Arbeit für richtig hältst. Ob du glaubst.
What is Finding Hitler all about? This is a show that you're on, and it's on A&E. Is that what it's on?
Yeah, A&E is the parent network. It airs on History Channel, and we just had our third season that just finished airing.
What's the thought process behind this? Is it legit? Because a lot of people are like, Finding Hitler, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
They found Hitler, he died.
Yeah, I mean,
Not really?
we don't know.
Right.
That's I mean, this isn't like Ancient Aliens. This is they declassified a bunch of documents. The Israelis, the British, and the Germans and Americans in the past 20 years have been consistently declassifying documents. And there were a bunch of specifically FBI documents that we were spending millions and millions of dollars actively searching for Hitler after the war.
Really?
Yeah, like millions of dollars. Like Hoover was like, no, send more FBI agents to South America, to North Africa, go to the Canary Islands, go to Spain, trying to find out where this guy went. Tons of real FBI documents with real leads, with real informants, some first eye accounts saying that they physically. So anyways, that's the show. Is us trying to find out, sift through reality and the fiction of the allure, the mystery of that asshole.
So what's the official story? The official story is that he killed himself, right?
Yep.
He killed himself in the bunker with
Yeah.
Ava Braun.
Yep.
And is there any photographic evidence of his death or anything?
Yeah. So what the Russians got the body. And they got his skull. And when they brought it back to Moscow, nobody has ever been able to independently verify who and what this body is. They let one genetic test occur, and the body with the bullet holes that they said was Hitler, and have said, and that's the narrative, that's the story, that's all the eyewitness accounts that are even in the vicinity of collaborating with each other, and corroborating each other's testimony. Like the closest version, because none of it seems to be very accurate, is that, okay, here's Hitler's skull, and when they did the genetic testing, it's that of a 35-year-old woman. So they're like, oh, well, this isn't Hitler, but they've said for the past 80 years that this is Hitler. So, okay, first, before we start throwing stones at Russia, let's go back to 1945, April, in Berlin. You have the Allies coming in, wrecking shop, dropping bombs, blowing everything up they can in every single which way. You have the Russians coming in from the opposite direction. They don't even have enough guns to arm all their soldiers. So if they have 200 guys, or 200,000 guys, they have 100,000 guns. If the guy in front of you dies, you just pick up his gun. That's what's happening in April of 1945 in Berlin. So the noose is tightening. There is it is chaos, anarchy, pandemonium. This is hell on earth, is Berlin, 1945. So I don't know if you could get a real story, the way that we do it now, where we have, this forensic experts that come in and document everything, and we look at all the different testimonies, say this is exactly how, it's not CSI. This is 1945 Berlin. It's crazy. So I don't know.
So there was no absolute proof.
No.
And a lot of Nazis did escape and go to South America.
The majority of anyone with power. The Nuremberg trials were not a witch hunt, but it was to close a chapter so we could start moving forward with communism. That's what it was. The threat of fascism, the threat of Hitler, the threat of killing all the Jews, the threat of world domination by the Nazis, that threat's gone. What's the next threat?
Communism.
It's communism.
Right.
So that had to be a closed chapter of our history so we could focus our resources and our efforts to what inevitably was going to, the wall goes up. We have East and West Berlin. We're already looking at Korea. This happens almost overnight.
Right, very quickly.
When Patton's like, no, homies, we need to go all the way to Moscow. This is not the end of our war, and we didn't listen to him. We then have been, fighting communism for the past 75 years.
So the ones with power that went to South America, I know a bunch of them went to Argentina, but they think they went to Honduras and a few other places. Mm-hmm. Where do they think they wound up?
So what you had in South America, both Chile and Argentina back-to-back had fascist regimes. You had Perón, who was part of the Nazi party starting all the way back into the mid-30s. He's the president of Argentina. So the Red Cross, they were there was about 3 different rat lines that guys were able to successfully get out of Europe into South America. And there's no question that we're talking thousands, if not tens of thousands of high-ranking Nazis made it there.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. And I'm not talking like little soldiers. I'm talking high-ranking Nazis, officers, guys like Joseph Mengele and Adolf Eichmann. I mean, these are the most disgusting, despicable humans to exist at the time. If Hitler is dead, Joseph Mengele is the guy that would take syringes full of blue ink and inject them. You have blue eyes, Joe, or you have brown eyes. Let me see if I can make them blue.
Oh, wow.
And then take twins and start torturing them to see if one would feel the pain. That's Joseph Mengele. I mean, that's the guy that then in South America was helping high-ranking Argentinians have abortions, and he set up, have you seen the movie Colonia?
No.
About Colonia Dignidad, which is, if you're listening right now, I almost warn you not to Google it, because it was a torture camp that was started by Joseph Schaefer, a Nazi, and Joseph Mengele, the doctor of death that escaped trial in Nuremberg and made it at the behest of Perón into Argentina. He set up the hospital at Colonia Dignidad, which was another safe haven for more Nazis in South America. Golda Meir and Ben Gurion, the presidents of Israel, they took the gloves off and they were just sending assassins to try to find these people and kill them. But what you got in South America were isolated German-only communities. You could go into Bariloche, Argentina, and I'd be like, "Buenos dias, amigos," and they're like, "Guten Morgen." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I meant good morning. Yeah, sorry, it's 2017, right? I thought we spoke Spanish here."
So, in 2017, you were there, and they were speaking German.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, I don't look very. I might look more European than I do. So it's just them seeing me walking down the street and be like,
"Wow."
Yeah. And there's tons of communities. I mean, if you go to Colonia Dignidad, which is now called Villa Bavaria, the Bavarian village, it is only German.
Whoa.
In the center of Chile, in the mountains of Chile. Like there's no Spanish being spoken there. It is exclusively German.